Tonight, we are curling up in the middle of a war, turning the volume up on blaster fire, and somehow still making it cozy. This is part 3, the final chapter of our Anakin Never Turns to the Dark Side timeline. The end of the road we have been walking together since he was just a terrified husband in the council chambers. And before we begin this video, I want to give a huge thank you to our patrons, our voice actors, and everyone on the team who helped bring this whole AU to life. You know the drill. If you want a chance to win a free lightsaber in the next giveaway, stay till the end, and I'll tell you exactly how you can win. So, our story begins on the worst night in Jedi history, in canon. The temple is supposed to burn, the younglings are supposed to fall, and Anakin Skywalker is supposed to march in as Darth Vader. But not here. Not in this timeline we have built together, by the will of the Force. Here, the Second Order 66 hits. Anakin doesn't lead the attack. He turns the Jedi Temple into the most heavily defended fortress in the entire galaxy. You remember how we got here? In part 1, Anakin stayed in the council chambers, torn between fear and faith, and Shakti didn't control him, but gently told him to trust the living Force. So instead of racing to save Palpatine, he waited. Mace Windu faced the Sith alone, struck down Darth Sidious, and paid the price with his life. But Anakin's soul stayed in the light. In part 2, the Senate learned the truth. The Council survived its own mistakes, and Anakin was finally named Master, even as he and Padme tried to build a secret, honest family in the heart of Coruscant. Now all of that is about to be tested. The clones still have their inhibitor chips. Palpatine's last orders are already buried in their minds, and somewhere in the shadows, a contingency is waiting to fire. When it does, blasters will still turn on Jedi. Alarms will still scream through the temple. But this time, Anakin is standing in front of the younglings, not above them. This episode is going to move fast. We are going from the first clone turning his rifle on a knight, to Anakin rallying the council, to Obi-Wan and Yoda reacting to a temple that refuses to fall, all the way out into the long, strange peace that follows. But we're also going to slow down, because the choices tonight are heavy. Anakin will have to decide what kind of father he is to Luke and Leia, what kind of husband he is to Padme, when the galaxy demands a symbol instead of a man, and what kind of master he becomes when the Jedi Order has to change or die. So grab your blankets, dim the lights, and settle in. The Night Order 66 fails is about to begin, and the galaxy will never think of Anakin Skywalker the same way again. Housekeeping in hyperspace and the big promise. And because the Night Order 66 fails, is such a wild, tangled moment in the timeline, let's take a breath in hyperspace together. Before we begin this video properly, here's what this finale is actually doing in one clean sentence. This episode traces the complete timeline of what happens if Anakin defends the Jedi Temple during Order 66, instead of leading the slaughter, picking up directly from his altered decision in Palpatine's office. So welcome back, my loves, to this strange little corner of the galaxy where Anakin trusts the Force, listens to his better angels, and the temple does not fall in fire and screams, but becomes a fortress in the heart of Coruscant. That one choice, igniting his saber for the Jedi instead of for the dark side, means clone inhibitor chips, Senate politics, and the entire future of Luke and Leia all start to bend in directions Palpatine never planned for. And we are going to walk that path from the first blaster bolt of Order 66 all the way to the final fate of the Republic. None of this sprawling alternate history happens alone, though. The art you're seeing, the music shifts, the extra voices giving life to masters on the council, or a panicked clone commander at the temple gates. That's all thanks to the incredible artists, composers, and voice actors who jumped into this trilogy with both feet. Patrons kept the lights on in this little Jedi archive. Collaborators helped map out which Jedi survive and which don't, and a few very patient friends listened to me rant about Abeloth at 2 a.m. By the will of the Force, this became bigger than a simple what if. As a tiny thank you back to you, there is a small reward waiting at the end of this video. I'm giving away a Star Wars art print of Anakin standing guard over the temple steps in this timeline, plus one custom lore breakdown where I'll dive into your personal what-if scenario in ridiculous detail. The how, the when, the little rules for entering. All of that will be at the very end, so if that sounds fun, stay with me until the last holocron closes. If you're new to the channel and you somehow hyperspace straight into part 3, don't worry. Parts 1 and 2 walk through Anakin's new path from the council chambers to his life with Padme, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia. And I absolutely recommend watching them for the full emotional punch, but you won't be lost if you start here. In just a moment, I'll do a rapid canon recap of the key changes: Mace and Palpatine, the Council's decision, the Skywalker family. So you can follow along, even if this is your first step into this larger world. All I ask is this: watch to the end before you decide whether to like, subscribe, or drop a comment telling me what you thought. Because only in the final minutes will we see what kind of Master Anakin truly becomes, whether the Jedi Order reforms or shatters, and whether the Republic is saved, reborn, or replaced by something far stranger than the Empire we knew. From Palpatine's office to the edge of Order 66. So, welcome back, my loves. We're dropping right into the moment. The entire galaxy tilts, and if you blink, you miss the choice that changes everything. Our story begins on that same stormy Coruscant evening you remember from Revenge of the Sith. Speeders streaming like rivers of light, thunder rolling over the Senate Dome, and Anakin Skywalker sprinting out of the council chambers, robes snapping behind him as he runs for Palpatine's office. In the canon timeline, this is where he sells his soul, but here, Shak Tai's calm words still echo in his mind, and by the will of the Force, he is not going to kneel. He bursts through the doors to find chaos already in motion. Mace Windu and his strike team have confronted the Chancellor, and the mask is off. Palpatine's voice is no longer warm and kindly. It's a rasping snarl as he ignites that crimson blade and hurls himself at the Jedi. Blue and red clash, the window shatters. Lightning screams across the office, and Anakin freezes because every nightmare he's ever had suddenly feels small compared to this. In this timeline, Mace still wins the duel. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't look back. He disarms Sidious, pins him with his blade, and when the lightning comes, Mace bears it, teeth clenched, skin burning, but he does not fall. Anakin sees the Chancellor's face twist and melt into the true, monstrous visage of Darth Sidious, and realizes, in one breathless instant, that the Council was right and he was wrong to doubt them this far. There is no plea for mercy. There is no, "I need him." There is only a stunned, hoarse whisper, "My God, what have you done?" as Mace strikes and the Sith Lord of the Republic dies. But peace doesn't follow. It can't. Anakin staggers back, heart pounding, because the visions of Padme dying in childbirth still claw at him. The Council's secrecy still stings, and now the one man he thought could save her has been unmasked as the architect of the entire war. He's clinging to the Jedi Code by a thread, and that thread is Obi-Wan's faith in him. Ahsoka's trust, the memory of younglings laughing in the temple halls. Out in the galaxy, the pieces are already on the board. Obi-Wan is still on Utapau, hunting Grievous in the Sinkhole City. Yoda is on Kashyyyk, feeling the currents of the Force twist around the Wookiee lines. Ahsoka and Rex are on their own mission beyond the core, far from Coruscant, but heading straight toward the storm. The Senate seethes with fear and ambition, and above it all, the Jedi Temple stands like a lighthouse and a bullseye at the same time. Back in the ruined office, alarms are starting to whisper through secure channels. Clones are moving strangely. Command codes are being armed. Palpatine's body lies broken on the floor, but his contingencies do not die with him. Somewhere deep in the military network, a buried protocol stirs. Order 66 is reaching for the switch, and this time, when it flips, the temple is not defenseless, and Anakin Skywalker is not his pawn. Yet. Anakin's breaking point, fear, love, and the temple order. 66 is reaching for the switch, and Anakin is already moving. Welcome back, my loves, because this is the moment everything inside him tries to tear in half. The alarms haven't started yet, the clones haven't turned yet, but Anakin Skywalker is sprinting for the temple, and every step feels like it's dragging chains. All the pressures that have been stacked on his shoulders since our story begins come crashing in at once. He is a secret husband, a soon-to-be father, and he can almost feel the phantom weight of a child in his arms, even as his boots slam against the speeder deck. Padme is carrying twins, and no one in the council knows. He was denied the rank of master, then finally granted it. But the sting of being told he wasn't ready still lives in his chest. He is the chosen one, the one the Jedi thought would bring balance. And yet he almost gave that destiny away to a Sith Lord sitting in a Senate office. His hands shake on the controls as he rockets through Coruscant's traffic. His breathing is shallow and uneven, like he's just finished a duel. But this is worse because there is no enemy he can see. Only the echo of Palpatine's voice in his head. I can help you save her. Anakin's eyes burn with unshed tears, and the city lights smear into streaks. He sees Padme on a medical table, skin pale, breath failing. He hears her whisper his name and then fall silent. Every time he blinks, that vision slams into him again and again, and he wonders if each choice he makes is pushing her closer to that fate. He wants to turn. He wants to yank the speeder around and fly straight to her apartment, scoop her up, take her off-world, disappear into some quiet corner of the Outer Rim, where the war and the Council and the dark side can never touch them. He thinks of Luke and Leia, though he doesn't know their names yet, and the idea of leaving them fatherless terrifies him. But he was raised in the temple. The Jedi found him as a boy, trained him, scolded him, loved him in their own distant way. There are younglings sleeping in their bunks, knights in meditation, masters in council, and his instincts scream at him to protect them. I have to decide, he thinks, the words pounding in his skull in rhythm with his heart. The right choice. What can I do? It's the same language Palpatine twisted, the same fear that almost dragged him under, but now it's turned back on itself. Before we begin this video's final descent into chaos, the Force itself seems to hold its breath around him. By the will of the Force, he chose to trust Mace in that office. Now he has to choose again, with far less time. The temple spires rise ahead, serene against a storm only he can feel. As his speeder dives toward the landing platform, the Force roils, hot and sick, like a wound tearing open. He feels thousands of voices brushing the edge of panic, Jedi and clones across the galaxy as hidden commands begin to whisper in their minds. Betrayal crackles through the currents. Anakin stumbles as he jumps from the cockpit, palms sweaty, heart racing, the sense of wrongness so strong it almost drives him to his knees. He reaches for his lightsaber, and for a single frozen heartbeat, he doesn't know who he's going to have to point it at. And in that heartbeat, the switch finally flips. Master Shark Tai returns, the catalyst in the shadows. The switch finally flips, and for one raw, terrifying instant, Anakin almost draws on the clones, almost on the Padawans, almost on himself. The Force is a storm in his veins, and he doesn't know which way is up anymore. Then the door behind him hisses open. It's not a trooper. It's not a frightened initiate. A calm, measured presence enters the room first, and only then does the figure follow. Shakti steps through the threshold, Leku's trailing, robes still damp from Kamino's endless rain, and the chaos inside Anakin slams against a new center of gravity. She has just come from the world of the cloners, from white-armored ranks and sterile halls. Our story begins for her a few hours earlier, when she stood over a line of sleeping troopers and felt something wrong humming beneath their skulls, like a chord in the Force that refused to resolve. Yoda and the Council told her to return at once, to take charge of temple security as a master of defense, as a master who understood the clones better than most, and by the will of the Force she obeyed. Now she sees Anakin. His breathing is ragged, shoulders hunched as if the weight of Coruscant itself is on his back. His knuckles are white around his lightsaber, his eyes too bright, too wild. Shakti doesn't ignite her own blade, doesn't bark orders, doesn't ask why the temple feels like it's holding its breath. She simply inclines her head, that soft Togruta bow that has calmed 100 frightened younglings, and says, very gently, "Skywalker, sit." The command lands like a lifeline. He hesitates, fighting the urge to keep pacing, to keep moving, because if he stops, he'll have to feel everything. But he sits. The door closes with a quiet hiss, and the storm narrows to the meditation chamber. She settles across from him, knees folding with the easy grace of a lifetime of practice. "Tell me," the master says, and she repeats it, anchoring herself and him. "Tell me, Anakin. What weighs on you?" Words spill, but not all of them. He speaks of Padme without saying her name at first, of visions of death and sand and fire, of a child that might be or might not be, of a love he thought he'd buried beneath duty. He speaks of the Council and their doubts, of Palpatine and his flattery, of being told to spy, of being told to wait, of being told nothing when all he wants is one clear path. "I'm terrified I'll choose wrong," he admits, voice cracking, "that I'll doom her, doom everyone. I don't know who to trust. I don't know if I can trust myself." Shakti closes her eyes and listens, not just to his words, but to the currents around them. The Force shudders. Somewhere deep in the temple, a clone's hand twitches toward his rifle a heartbeat too early. Somewhere above Coruscant, 1,000 tiny switches begin to flip. The dark wave hits her like cold water. Order 66 is not a phrase in her mind, not yet. But the intent is unmistakable. Betrayal coded into loyalty, slaughter wrapped in obedience. She exhales slowly, letting the fear pass through her, and when she opens her eyes, they are steady. "Something is coming," she tells Anakin, and her voice is the calm at the center of the storm. A great darkness, moving through the clones, through the Senate, through the temple itself. "But hear me, my loves in the Force," she adds softly, a little joke she once used with the younglings that tugs the ghost of a smile to his lips. You do not have to face it alone. She leans forward, gaze locking with his. If you choose to stay, if you stand with the Jedi as a master in truth and not just in title, we will meet whatever this is together. You, me, the Council, every knight and Padawan within these walls. The temple will not fall today. Not if Anakin Skywalker decides to defend it. Somewhere outside, alarms begin to wail. And for the first time since his visions began, Anakin feels the possibility that staying might be the bravest choice of all. The conversation that saves the galaxy. The alarms stab through the quiet like blaster fire, and Anakin's hand goes to his saber on instinct, but Shakti doesn't rise. She watches him, calm in the storm, and in that stillness, our story begins to tilt. She simply says, soft but unyielding, "Skywalker, what do you fear most in this moment?" The question hits harder than any clone rifle. Anakin swallows, shoulders tight. Losing her, he breathes. "Padme, I saw her die, Master, in my arms. I felt it through the Force. Every time I close my eyes, I hear her scream and I can't stop it. I thought the Jedi would help me, but the Council just shut me out." He paces, the alarms wailing under his words. "They lied. They held me back. Mace never trusted me. The Council never really believed in me. And now they want me to spy on the one man who always has. Palpatine believed I was the chosen one when no one else did. He treated me like an equal, like a friend. And now I find out he's a Sith Lord." Anakin laughs once, bitter. "So tell me, Master, who am I supposed to trust? The Council that fears me, or the Sith who's always been honest about wanting me?" Shakti lets the silence breathe. "You fear losing Padme," she says, "but you also fear being wrong. About the Council, about Palpatine, about yourself." Her eyes soften. The dark side loves that kind of fear. He stops, jaw clenched. "I don't know whose side I'm on. Mace told me to stay here, but he never tells me anything. Palpatine tells me everything, but it's all been a lie. I'm loyal to Padme, to the Republic, to the Jedi, and all of them are tearing me in different directions." "Loyalties can conflict," Shakti answers, "but the Force does not. The will of the Force is not a puzzle to solve or a lever to pull. True power is not about control, Anakin. Not over death, not over Padme, not over the Council. It is about trust. When we grab for shortcuts out of fear, the right outcome almost never follows." He shakes his head. "Easy to say when it's not your wife in those visions." Her gaze flickers just for a heartbeat, and you can tell, my loves, she's remembering every Jedi she's lost. You think the Council does not care if you fall? Mace Windu argued harder than anyone that you might truly be the chosen one. He pushed for your knighthood, for your seat on this Council. Their caution was not hatred. It was fear of losing you, the way we lost so many others. Anakin blinks, the foundation under his anger shifting. "Mace believed in me. More than he ever told you," she says. "We are imperfect, Anakin. We made mistakes with you, but jealousy was never one of them." He looks toward the door, where distant blaster fire is beginning to echo up through the temple. "So what do I do?" Shakti finally stands. "I will not decide your path. That is how the dark side works, not the light. I can only promise this. If you choose to stand with the temple, with the Jedi, I will stand beside you. No bargains, no secrets, just presence, just trust." Outside, Order 66 tightens like a noose. Inside, Anakin Skywalker inhales, feeling the Force swirl around that single fragile choice. And by the will of the Force, whatever he does next will save the galaxy, or burn it. Welcome back to the edge of destiny. Calm before the storm, choosing to stay outside. The galaxy is tightening, but inside this quiet room, time hesitates. Anakin doesn't move at first. He just listens to Shaak Ti's words echo in the Force, like a bell that refuses to stop ringing, and then, slowly, his body finally remembers how to breathe. His shoulders, which have been locked up around his ears since the council meeting, begin to sink. Each exhale leaves him a little lighter, like he's setting down invisible armor he's been carrying since Geonosis, since Tatooine, since the first time he thought the dark side might be the only way to keep anyone safe. His chest stops heaving, his breath evens out, and for the first time in what feels like days, Anakin lets his eyes close. No visions, no Palpatine, no council. Just the hum of the temple and the quiet, steady presence of another Jedi sitting beside him. Shaak Ti settles into meditation as if she's been doing nothing else her whole life. Her montrals tilt slightly, her hands fold, and the Force gathers around her like a cloak. The clones have always admired her, whispered that she never rattles, never raises her voice, never panics. And Anakin can feel why. Her presence is a steady flame in a storm, not flashy like his, not explosive, just enduring. Without meaning to, he finds his breath matching hers, in and out, until their rhythms sync and the room feels less like a council chamber and more like a sanctuary. The temple lights are low now, Coruscant's city glow seeping in as a soft wash instead of a harsh glare. Traffic rumbles far below, but up here it's muted, like someone turned the volume of the galaxy down. Two Jedi, seated cross-legged in the dim, the council seats looming empty around them like silent witnesses. The Force seems to draw in tight, holding its breath, wrapping the chamber in a fragile shell of patience and trust. This is what the light side looks like when it isn't swinging a saber. This is what Master Yoda always told him about, but Anakin never quite understood. And then, far away, that shell shatters. On Kashyyyk, Yoda's eyes snap open. Blaster rifles pivot. Loyal green armor becomes a firing squad. He feels the clones turn in a single horrible wave, and his hand flies to his chest as if he's been shot himself. Across a dozen worlds, Jedi fall, mid-leap, mid-sentence, mid-laugh, as Order 66 detonates inside their soldiers' minds. In the Senate office, Palpatine presses the command with a crooked, satisfied smile, already picturing the temple as an easy target, already imagining blue blades extinguished under a tide of loyal troopers. By the will of the Force, he thinks the game is over. Back in the chamber, that invisible shockwave hits. Anakin's calm shivers. The Force around him spikes. Fear, betrayal, pain flooding in like a breached dam. His eyes fly open. For half a heartbeat, he's back in that nightmare corridor. Younglings screaming, his saber igniting red. But this time, Shaak Ti is right there. Her hand already on the floor, grounding herself, grounding him. Something's wrong, he breathes, but he already knows. Of course he knows. The first distant blaster shots echo through the temple halls, sharp and wrong in a place built for learning and light. Alarms roar to life, painting the chamber in pulsing red. Somewhere below, clones are shouting orders they don't understand. Anakin doesn't stand up. He launches to his feet. He doesn't look to the door. He doesn't look to the sky. He looks at the heart of the temple, as if he can see every youngling, every knight, every master in danger all at once. He has already made his choice. He is not leaving. He is defending his home. And as his saber snaps to his hand, you can almost feel the Force itself lean forward, waiting to see what Skywalker does when the storm finally hits. Welcome back, my loves, to the moment Palpatine never planned for, turning the temple into a fortress. The storm hits all at once. Alarms scream through the halls, temple guards shout into comlinks, and somewhere far above Coruscant, a single coded pulse races through every clone's mind. Order 66 ignites like a virus in the Force, but this time, Anakin is already moving. He doesn't hesitate, and he doesn't ask permission. He and Shaak Ti burst out of the council chamber, robes snapping behind them, and in that instant, you see why the council once thought he might be the chosen one and the best pilot in the galaxy. He doesn't run for a ship. He runs deeper into the temple, toward the control center buried in its spine. Shaak Ti peels away toward the medical wing, already sensing where she'll be needed, and Anakin slams through blast doors and security fields like they're suggestions. Techs look up in shock, but he's at the main console before anyone can protest, hands flying over controls with the same instinct he uses in a cockpit. He knows every landing vector, every hangar, every emergency protocol, and he starts turning Palpatine's perfect battlefield into a fortress. Landing platforms scramble, guidance beacons flip, and approach lanes suddenly reroute into dead air. Outer blast doors slam shut, internal bulkheads seal, and he cuts or jams every external communication line he can reach, isolating the temple from the wider war. If the Chancellor wants his massacre, he's going to have to fight for every single step. But Anakin also knows clones. He fought beside them, bled with them, laughed with them, and he understands their tactics better than most Jedi Masters. He pulls up unit rosters, command frequencies, and starts tagging every commander and senior officer assigned to Coruscant. Temple security and the few clones still inside the temple get a single, sharp order. Non-lethal force. Detain or stun these men on sight. No debates, no questions. Pattern interrupt. A temple guard actually asks, "Master Skywalker, are we arresting our own?" Anakin doesn't even look up. He just says, "They're not themselves." And the way he says it makes the room go quiet. Down in the med center, Shaak Ti feels the same wrongness. She's studied the Kaminoan files. She knows about the behavioral tampering the council never fully understood, and as stunned clones start arriving, she realizes the truth by the will of the Force. This isn't loyalty, it's programming. She and the healers move fast, scanners humming, scalpels and Force-guided hands working in frantic harmony as they attempt emergency inhibitor chip removals, triaging men who were brothers only minutes ago. Meanwhile, the temple itself wakes up. Hidden defense grids come online, automated turrets drop from the ceilings of outer halls, shielded corridors shimmer to life, forcing any invader into narrow, defensible choke points. Deep below, in the foundations, Anakin brushes against something else entirely. A cold, ancient pressure pushes back against his awareness. The Sith shrine buried beneath the temple. The same darkness Palpatine once whispered would make him strong. For a heartbeat, it calls to his fear for Padme, for the younglings, for everyone he loves. He rejects it. He shoves that presence away like a bad dream, and centers himself on the tiny flickers of light he can feel throughout the temple. Every child clutching a training saber, every knight racing to their posts. He is not here to rule, he is here to protect. And then the first wave hits. Gunships punch through redirected traffic and slam onto a side platform, doors blowing open as armored troopers pour into an outer hall. They expect confusion, scattered resistance, a slaughter of unprepared Jedi. Instead, they find a single figure already waiting at the far end, framed by flickering shields and the glow of emergency lights. Anakin Skywalker ignites his saber, blue light flooding the corridor, stance low and unyielding, defending the very order Palpatine thought he had turned him against. "Not one step further," he says. And for the first time, Order 66 hesitates. Welcome back, my loves, to the moment the temple stops being a target and becomes a fortress. Clones, younglings, and the battle for their souls. The clones in front of him do what clones always do. They obey. Blasters rise, blue and white armor of the 501st filling the corridor. And for a half second, Anakin's brain refuses to process it, because these are his men, his friends, the ones who painted their helmets for Ahsoka and followed him through fire and vacuum and every nightmare the war could throw at them. Then the first volley screams toward him, and the moment shatters. Anakin moves. The blue blade becomes a storm, catching bolts, hurling them into ceiling and floor and empty durasteel instead of center mass. Because he can't. He just can't start by killing them. He steps in, twists, knocks rifles from hands, severs armor at joints instead of hearts, leaving men screaming but alive. And each impact feels like it's carving another line across his own soul. He thought the dark side would come from anger. Instead, it claws at him through grief. One trooper gets too close. DC-15 leveled at a cluster of Padawans behind Anakin. There is no time for mercy. The saber flashes once, clean, and the clone drops. Anakin hears himself gasp like someone else is wearing his body. These were my brothers, while the main halls turn into a maze of stun blasts, ricochets, and shouted orders. Shaak Ti is already 3 steps ahead. The Togruta Master stalks through the temple's inner security hub. Montrol's lit by emergency crimson. She barks routes to temple guards, reroutes blast doors, and calls out to any clones whose chips were already removed after Five's warning, forming ad hoc escorts around clusters of younglings. Hidden passages the Council never told the Senate about yaw open, revealing maintenance shafts and meditation tunnels, and frightened Padawans are pushed into them 2 by 2. By the will of the Force, you run, she tells a group of initiates, voice firm but kind, and they do. Up in the council chamber, our story begins again, but this time it refuses to be a tragedy. The doors hiss open to reveal a ring of tiny figures, training sabers clutched in shaking hands. Eyes huge as clone boots thunder closer. Canon wants you to flinch here, my loves. Instead, Anakin drops to one knee, deactivating his blade so the room goes dim and quiet. "You're safe with me," he says, and he believes it so hard the Force hums around them. Form up, smallest in the middle. We're going down to the lower levels. They move because he is Anakin Skywalker, and they have played at being him in the training halls. And now their hero is real and breathing and holding out his hand. As they file out, he takes the last youngling's palm in his, like a father leading a child away from a fire he refuses to let touch them. Deep below, in the med center, another battle rages. Healers and droids drag stunned clones onto tables, scanners whirring as they hunt the tiny slivers of control in each skull. A surgical droid extracts a chip, holds it up, and a 501st officer on the table. Jesse, helmet marked with the Republic cog, sucks in a ragged breath as the fog clears. "General Skywalker," he croaks, seeing Anakin burst in with a trail of younglings. "What did we do?" "You're going to help fix it," Anakin answers. No time for blame. Jesse swings off the table, grabs a spare rifle, and when he turns it on, his former squad mates, there are tears in his eyes under the visor. Minutes later, the corridor falls silent. Smoke drifts. Younglings huddle behind overturned benches. Bodies, Jedi robes, clone armor, lie tangled together, and the smell of scorched stone hangs heavy. Anakin stands in the middle of it, dust in his hair, sweat stinging his eyes, knuckles white around his saber. He looks from a fallen knight to a clone he once joked with over rations and understands, finally, that Palpatine hasn't just tried to kill the Jedi. He has turned the whole galaxy into a weapon pointed at itself. Enough, Anakin whispers, more vow than word. He isn't just defending a building anymore. He's going to drag the Sith into the light and make the entire Republic see what it almost became. And above them, turbo-lift doors begin to open on the next wave. Signals in the dark. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka, and Rex. The turbo-lift doors scream open and blaster fire pours out. But deep in the temple, something else is already happening. While Anakin and the defenders shift to meet the next wave, Shaak-Ti is moving just as fast in the opposite direction, dragging a trail of wounded and Padawans toward the secure communications vault. Because if the Jedi are going to survive this night, the galaxy has to hear the truth. In the dim blue of the relay room, Shaak-Ti's hands fly over controls she helped design and then hid from the Council, and Anakin stands guard at the door, armor scorched, saber humming, feeling clones and Jedi die all over Coruscant. She told him once that the temple had voices meant only for Jedi ears, buried channels that even the Senate didn't know existed, and now, by the will of the Force, they light up one by one. The message is short because there is no time. Order 66 is a command seeded in the clones. The Jedi are not traitors, and the Sith Lord behind everything is Chancellor Palpatine. Shaak-Ti records it. Anakin adds his own face and name, and together they shove it out into every hidden frequency they can reach. Far away on Utapau, Obi-Wan is clinging to a medical capsule in a flooded sinkhole, bruised and half-conscious, still tasting the betrayal when Cody ordered the guns to fire. He thinks the temple must already be gone. He thinks Anakin is either dead or lost to the dark side. And then his comlink crackles with a sound he never expected to hear again. Temple encryption, scrambled to static and pain. He rewrotes power, cleansed the signal, and for a heartbeat, Anakin's face appears, scorched and determined, standing in front of the Council seal, calling Palpatine Sith. That one word snaps Obi-Wan upright. Exile can wait. Hiding can wait. He steals a fighter instead of a freighter, angles its nose toward Coruscant, and whispers to the empty cockpit that he's coming home. On Kashyyyk, Yoda staggers as the first wave hits, as clone minds twist and Jedi lights go dark like candles in a storm. But this time, there is something else riding the current. A stubborn, blazing knot of light on Coruscant that refuses to be snuffed out. Anakin, the temple, still fighting. He looks at Tarful and Chewbacca, and they don't need words. They just start moving. The Wookiees stage a distraction. Yoda vanishes into the trees, and a stolen shuttle claws for orbit, with a tiny green master already plotting a course for the one battlefield the Sith never wanted him to reach. And in the cold wreckage above an unnamed moon, Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex are in their own nightmare. The clones turned, the cruiser fell, and she thought the temple's silence meant everything she loved had burned. But as the debris field cools, a faint, distorted pulse rides an old Jedi frequency through the static, not the full message, just fragments. Temple, alive, Sidious. It's enough. Ahsoka looks at Rex, chip scar still fresh, and she doesn't talk about running anymore. She talks about going back. Welcome back, my loves, to a galaxy where the temple has become a beacon instead of a tomb, where Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka, Rex, and who knows how many scattered Jedi now have a single point to converge on. Palpatine thought he'd lit the fuse on the end of the Jedi Order, but what he's really done is call every surviving master and Padawan to the same burning hill. They're all coming home. The only question is who gets there first. Exposing Sidious, the war for the Senate's mind. They're all coming home, and that means the war is about to jump from blaster fire to broadcast signals. Inside the battered but unbroken temple, Anakin doesn't head for the hangar. He heads for the truth. He and Shaak Ti move through smoke-filled corridors into the archives and security nexus, and the surviving temple technicians are already there, hands shaking over flickering consoles, trying to hold together a shattered network. Anakin told them once that information wins wars as surely as sabers, and now they're about to test that. They start pulling everything. Combat recordings from Mace's final approach to Palpatine's office, security feeds of clone movements, emergency powers, logs that show, line by line, how the Chancellor quietly rewrote the Republic while everyone was looking at the front lines. Shaak Ti orders a deep trace on restricted files, and there it is. Encrypted references to Darth Sidious, cross-tagged with Palpatine's private clearance. It's not clean, it's not perfect, but it's enough. Our story begins to tilt here, my loves, because instead of the temple burning in silence, it starts talking back. The technicians rewrote power from sealed hangars and training wings into the holonet relays. Anakin stands at the center of the control pit, cloak scorched, armor plates dented, and by the will of the Force, he feels for every surviving node they can still reach. They don't have time for a polished statement, so they don't try. Pattern interrupt. Across the galaxy, just as Palpatine's prepared speech about Jedi treason is supposed to roll, the feed tears like cheap flimsy. Senators in their skyboxes, families in undercity cantinas, clone barracks on distant worlds all see the same thing. Stuttering security footage from the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu's purple blade flashing, Palpatine's face twisting into something inhuman as lightning pours from his hands. Over it, Shaak Ti's calm voice explains the emergency powers trail, while a simple text overlay repeats one phrase: Palpatine is the Sith Lord. The Senate doesn't react as one, it shatters. Bail Organa goes pale, Mon Mothma clutches the railing, and without a word, they both start sending encrypted messages to known Jedi sympathizers. Because if even half of this is real, then the entire Clone War has been a lie. Others, though, seize on the chaos. Mazameda calls for order. Loyalist senators shout that the images are faked, that this is exactly the kind of information attack a treasonous order would mount. Palpatine, of course, adapts. He lets the footage run just long enough to seed doubt, then slams his own override. Now his face fills the holonet, scarred from his duel with Mace, voice trembling with rehearsed sorrow as he claims the Jedi seized the temple, murdered loyal clones, and are now hijacking communications. He calls the temple a terrorist stronghold. He calls Anakin a rogue weapon he failed to guide, a tragic hero turned against the Republic. And behind the scenes, he stops relying on chips and orders. He diverts more forces to Coruscant, not just clones, but Coruscant Guard loyalists, bounty hunters, even Black Ops units that never wore armor with a number. The temple, still broadcasting fragments of truth whenever it can punch through his jamming, becomes something new, a symbol. Now the stakes break wide open. This isn't only about whether Anakin, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and the others survive the night. It's about who gets to define reality for the next 1,000 years. Does the Republic reform under the shock of seeing its own darkness exposed? Does it collapse into warlord chaos? Or does Palpatine harden it into a colder, quieter empire that rules not just with fear, but with a story the galaxy is too frightened to question. And in the middle of that storm, in a temple that refuses to fall, Anakin Skywalker is about to make the choice that decides which future takes root. The final siege and Anakin's trial by light. And in the middle of that storm, in a temple that refuses to fall, Anakin Skywalker is about to make the choice that decides which future takes root. Welcome back, my loves. The sky over Coruscant goes from bruised purple to hellfire red as Palpatine realizes the clones alone won't be enough. The first wave has stalled against sealed blast doors and reprogrammed squads, so he escalates. Gunships scream in from every direction, their markings scrubbed of Legion colors, carrying not brothers grown on Camino, but black-armored loyalist shock troops, mercenaries, and the first twisted prototypes of dark side adepts he's been hiding in the shadows. They drop heavy cannons on the surrounding plazas, and, by the will of the Force, the temple becomes a fortress under siege. Turbo-laser fire hammers the outer spires, statues of ancient masters crack and tumble, and orbital batteries from captured star destroyers begin precision strikes that walk closer and closer to the main ziggurat. Inside, the air tastes like dust and ozone and fear, but the Jedi refuse to break. Anakin is everywhere at once. He sprints along shattered balconies, deflecting artillery shrapnel away from clusters of younglings, then leaps down into the courtyard where shock troopers are forcing a breach. His blade is a blue comet, his movements a storm. But every time rage surges up, every time he thinks of Padme alone in their apartment, of twins he might never hold, Shakti's calm voice cuts through the noise, the way she told him the Force would carry the right outcome if he trusted it. He remembers the way Padme looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, not afraid of his power, but proud of his kindness. So instead of lashing out to dominate, he fights to shield. He shoves collapsing pillars away from wounded clones whose chips have been removed. He covers retreating healers. He chooses protection over punishment again and again. In the chaos, there's a ripple, a cold pressure pushing against every mind in the temple. Holoprojectors crackle to life on their own, and a towering image of Palpatine, half scarred from Mace Windu's final stand, floods the halls with his voice. He doesn't shout. He pities. He calls Anakin my boy, tells him this is pointless, that the Jedi and the Senate will turn on him the moment the smoke clears, that only the dark side is strong enough to save Padme from the death the visions promised. He offers a shuttle, a secret corridor, a place at his side. Leave the temple. Let it fall. Rule, and Padme lives. Anakin stops on the ruined steps of the grand entrance, blaster bolts streaking past him, and for a heartbeat, the war goes silent. He could run. He could end this agony. But he sees a future where his children grow up flinching at his footsteps, where Padme smiles for the holocams and cries in the dark. He lifts his saber, not in threat, but like a banner. If I have to become a monster to save her, he says, voice carrying through every open channel, then I've already lost her. Padme doesn't need a god. Our children don't need a tyrant. They need a galaxy that doesn't fear their father. The projection flickers as Palpatine's composure finally cracks. And right then, slicing through the outer lines like a familiar promise, Obi-Wan's starfighter dives toward the burning plaza, Yoda's shuttle close behind, as Ahsoka and a chip-free Rex rally a handful of reclaimed clones for one last desperate push on the crumbling flank. Aftermath, a new Jedi Order and a different Skywalker legacy. Obi-Wan's fighter screams overhead, and for the first time that night, the clones on the plaza look up instead of forward, And in that heartbeat, the war everyone thought they understood quietly ends. Not cleanly, not nobly, but it ends. In the immediate chaos, with temple guns online and Jedi shields still holding, the Senate feed does what Palpatine never planned for. It keeps rolling. His yellow eyes, the confession, the lightning, the orders to exterminate the Jedi, all of it floods the HoloNet. By the time Obi-Wan and Yoda land and fight their way into the control tower, key senators are already on secure channels, and Padme is at the center of it, voice shaking but clear as she calls for an emergency session to strip Palpatine's powers. He tries to flee, of course, tries to twist the narrative, but the temple stands and the clones are hesitating, and the myth of the benevolent chancellor dies in real time. Depending on how you like your headcanon, my loves, maybe he falls in one last duel against Yoda and Anakin in the ruins of his office, or maybe he's dragged out in binders to face a tribunal. But either way, the classic empire never rises. There is no clean proclamation, no cheering crowds under a new banner, just a galaxy staring at the monster it almost crowned. But welcome back to reality in this timeline. That doesn't mean the Republic snaps back like a rubber band. Worlds that lost millions to the Clone Wars walk away. Others stay but demand teeth in their charters, demanding oversight of Jedi deployments and term limits for senators and chancellors. The new government is messy, slower, more decentralized. And every planetary leader now has, what if another Palpatine, sitting in the back of their mind like a ghost. Inside the temple, the reckoning is even sharper. Survivor councils form, with Yoda and Obi-Wan and Shak-Ty and Anakin seated together. And by the will of the Force, they admit what almost broke them. The code changes. Attachment is no longer treated as a sickness, but as a fire to be tended. Love is allowed, families are allowed, but training around grief and fear becomes as important as saber drills. Masters speak openly about loss. Younglings are taught what the dark side feels like before it whispers in secret. Padme, meanwhile, doesn't fade on a medical bed while droids shrug. The stress is real, the trauma is heavy, but Anakin never turns his blade on children, never chokes her on Mustafar, never becomes the nightmare in her visions. She survives childbirth, and Luke and Leia are registered openly as Skywalker Amidalas, tiny Force-strong toddlers toddling through temple gardens and Senate corridors alike. The Jedi don't hide them, they guide them. Ahsoka spars with them, Obi-Wan tutors them, Padme teaches them procedure and policy, while Anakin quietly shows them how to listen when the Force whispers no. Anakin himself becomes the man who broke Order 66, the hero who turned his saber on the clones instead of the Jedi. But that title feels heavier than any armor. He remembers every trooper he cut down, every friend he couldn't reach in time, every corridor where the blaster fire stopped too late. He knows how close he came to walking into that office and kneeling. So when the new council debates this softer code and this harder galaxy, his voice is calm, careful, almost wary. Because if the galaxy could almost fall that far with him on the light side, he can't help but wonder, and neither can you, what hidden darkness might be waiting to test this fragile new Jedi Order next. Closing the timeline, themes, what-ifs, and your turn. So let's pull the camera back, my loves, and look at what this one trembling moment actually did. Anakin stayed in that chair. He trusted Shak-Ty. He trusted the Council. He trusted the quiet nudge of the Force. And because of that, he defended the temple. Instead of marching on it, Order 66 only half worked. Palpatine was dragged into the light. The Republic bent instead of breaking, and the Jedi Order lived long enough to become something new. Our story begins with that single choice, and then it just keeps echoing. Clones turn their rifles, and Anakin turns his blade, but this time it's against the programming in their heads instead of the younglings at his feet. The temple becomes a fortress instead of a grave. Obi-Wan and Yoda arrive to a bastion still standing. Ahsoka and Rex find a home to come back to, and the 501st is remembered as the Legion that helped break the chip, not the one that burned the archives. From there, everything we thought we knew about the fall of the Republic twists. Palpatine is exposed as the Sith Master, his emergency powers stripped, his face and his plans shown to the Senate and the Holonet. The Republic doesn't slide cleanly into an empire. It staggers, reforms, argues itself hoarse, and out of that mess comes a rougher, more honest government, with actual checks on war powers and on the Jedi. The Council is cleared, but they are not the same. They write a code that finally admits what Anakin and Padme already knew. Love can be a danger, but it can also be an anchor. And that's the real heart of this whole timeline. Destiny in Star Wars has never really been about a prophecy carved in stone. It's about what you do when you are terrified and alone. Anakin had the same visions, the same fear, the same offer from the dark side, but he made one different move and let Shakti sit beside him. And that changed more than any chosen one riddle ever did. By the will of the Force, a single act of trust rewrote the galaxy. In canon, his fall is still powerful, and it still matters. The tragedy of Darth Vader, the broken temple, Luke staring at twin suns and choosing hope anyway. All of that is beautiful, and it hurts in a way that shaped this fandom. This ending doesn't replace that one. It sits next to it. One version shows how far a soul can fall and still come back. The other shows what happens when he never has to crawl out of that armor at all. So, before we begin this video's final farewell, here's your little reward for sticking through all 3 parts. If you want to enter the giveaway, drop a comment telling me your favorite change in this timeline, or pitch the next what if you want to see. Maybe it's, what if Maul saved the younglings? Or, what if Obi-Wan took the fall for Anakin and Padme? I'll pick winners from the comments, and if you like, subscribe, and share this around, it really does keep these long, cozy stories possible. To everyone who's been here since part 1, welcome back every time, and thank you for spending these hours in the temple with me. And to those of you who just found this finale first, you are officially part of this little what-if council now. Our next story might follow a redeemed Maul, or a Jedi Order that walks away from Coruscant entirely. But until then, stay safe, trust the light, and remember, the galaxy can change on the choice you make in a single heartbeat.